Exodus, if you would. Exodus chapter 13. We're going to look at 13, a good part of it, and 14. Obviously, we're not going to cover all the verses. It's a little bit of a survey of this story, but I want to read the first 6 verses, and then we'll also make allusions to the rest of chapter 14. Exodus chapter 13, beginning in verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. It's God's word. When you're growing up, I'm guessing that a good part of you, if not most of you, played Follow the Leader. It's a pretty simple game. That's why it's a child's game, where there's always one designated person who is the leader, and everyone else falls in line behind them, and you follow them. And basically the idea is that wherever they lead, you follow, and whatever they do while they're leading you, that's what you do. And so I remember playing as a child. The leader would kind of do crazy things. Sometimes they'd walk, sometimes they'd run, sometimes they would clap, they would jump, they would do all kinds of things. And at times, depending on who the leader was, they would like to make things difficult, and they would do all kinds of crazy things that you found hard to do. And some people got so frustrated, they eventually would stop following the leader, and then they would be out of the game. And so that was a little bit of what is. If you go to our text tonight, Israel was delivered by God out of the bond of Egypt, and they were headed to the promised land. Now, in order to get there, they had to play follow the leader. Moses was their human leader, but ultimately, above all else, God is ultimately the leader. And at the time of the Exodus, in fact, my old Bible in the back is filled with maps. And one of the maps in my Bible have the Exodus routes. No one knows exactly for sure, because things have changed over the last 3,000 plus years. But they have a good idea of what the routes were. So if you were going to leave where they were in Egypt and travel to the promised land, they could go by and it's in our text, the way of the Philistines. Now that was called the Via Maris, meaning in Latin, the road. So that would be the shortest route. If here's Egypt, they could go around this way and come right up to the promised land. It's literally the shortest route. There's a second one, what's the way of Shur, it says in our text. Now, I don't know if it says in our text, but it is the way of Shur. Now, that was a little lower, and you come a little lower, and they come up a little bit different. So the first one was about 2 weeks long. The second one was about a month long. And then there was the other one called the way from Egypt to Arabia, which virtually nobody took because it is flat, straight out, middle. It was longer, but it was the desert. I mean, if you went that way, you had to have a lot of people with you, a ton of camels, a boatload of water and food, because there wasn't anything out there. And you would be also prey to people who might attack you as hordes of people who use that to their advantage. So those were the 3 routes. Now, if you're an Israelite and you're leaving, you're going from this place in Egypt and you're going to the promised land, you're thinking that you're going to move east, right? You're going to go this way and then you're going to bend up. So I'm thinking that they're going to be in this line, they're following their leader, Moses, and ultimately God. And when they take the trip out, they don't go any of those routes. They go south. So they're not choosing those ways. God didn't choose them to take the easy route, the shortest route, the one that was, in their mind, the one that everybody else would have taken. He turned south into the way of the wilderness. It's the opposite direction, completely opposite of the promised land. Longer, harder. It wasn't 2 weeks. It wasn't 2 months to get there. They took 40 years. So that's quite a detour, right? So you can imagine, this follow the leader was certainly not a game. It was about as serious as you could get. I can imagine 21st people standing in line and questioning Moses and telling him, and as they walk behind him, doesn't he know that we're going the wrong way? I mean, does he have a GPS or not? And so everyone's probably thinking to themselves, this isn't the shortest route. What are we doing? We're not stopping. There's no hotels out here. There's no sightseeing. There's nothing for us to do. Can't God see and tell Moses that we need to turn around? Let me ask you, have you ever questioned the ways that God leads you? In your mind, you think, oh God, I know you know this is the shortest route to you know where I want to be in life, what I want to do, the things I want to have. You know between point A and point B, a straight line is the best way to go. So why aren't we going there? Why aren't we doing that? Can't you see the road we're going on is unnecessary? This is a road that's way longer, harder. Why would we want that road? Why don't we take the comfortable, short, easy road? We always, when I was growing up, sang this little chorus, the Lord knows the way through the wilderness. Finish it. All I have to do is follow. If it was only that easy. We just walk behind him, do what he says, and everything will be peachy keen. And we know this, we don't want to follow that. Because we're starting to learn that he doesn't always take the routes that we want him to. So I'm going to give you a principle tonight. It's worth writing down. If you haven't figured it out by your experience yet, you will. God does not often lead you in the way that you think is best. And if it's a Christian, if you haven't figured that out, you will. Rather, what he does is he regularly chooses the alternate route. I'm not even saying the alternate route that was available that other people could have chosen. He often takes you down a route that no one else has used, that no one else wants. That's why it's not used. Why? Why does God do that in our lives? Why not the easiest? Why not the shortest? Here's why. Because he knows what you don't know, and he sees what you can't see. Let me say it again. You know why? Because he knows what you don't know, and he sees what you cannot see. To follow your God as your leader, you must learn to follow him by faith and not by sight. Because if you follow by sight, a lot of what you see on the road God leads you will not make sense. It doesn't make sense that we're going this way. And all the things that are on this road, it won't make sense. You know, I often refer to Pilgrim's Progress. And the whole book is about a journey from the time someone pilgrim gets saved all the way to the end of it. And he often has to go down roads he wouldn't choose, and he meets people and things happen and it goes bad. And I can tell you this, that's not just a story. We can have people stand up tonight and say, I know what it's like to travel down the road that God leads, because it's not always the best in our minds. So what I want to do tonight is explore our text and understand, hey, how do I then, Pastor Walker, how do I walk by faith and not by sight? Well, our text is going to give us some ideas. So let's look at it together. The main emphasis in the paragraph that I read from you in the verses 17 through 22 of chapter 13 is on God's leadership. Let me point it out to you so you can circle the words or make notes. The first one is 13:17. He says, when Pharaoh let the people go, he's going to tell you, here's what God didn't do. He didn't lead them this way. And the next verse he's going to tell, but he did lead in this way. And when he led down that way, he's going to tell us in verse 21 that he did it personally. So the question is in our text, if God leads, and he does, why does he say, I'm not going to go this way, I'm going to go this way? Because he wants us, remember, all the way along tonight in our talk, he wants you to live by faith and not by sight. One of the most important, if you're a parent, you know this, one of the most important lessons of parenthood is a lesson that you cannot, for the life of you, convince your children that it's a good thing. And that is this, that you know more than they do and you can see more than they do. Try telling your kids that, right? So your kids are young, foolish. They think when they're 14 or 15 that they should be able to call the shots. They know, because I am in 9th grade now, right? And so they think they know enough to make own decisions. They don't need any input from you, even though you got 25 years on them. They don't need that. So they think that they know, and so they ask questions based on that view. They say, hey, why do I have such an early curfew? I'm 13 now. Why can't I stay up till 1 in the morning? Why do I have to do my homework before I do everything else? I don't know if you had that. I had that. You had to come from school. You're not going to do anything until you get all your homework done. And there were never exceptions to that. Why can I not stay over at so-and-so's house? I know their parents won't be there, but we'll be good. Why is it that you limit me so much on how much I play video games and how much I sit behind a screen online? Why is it that I don't have carte blanche for that? They don't understand. You know why? Because they don't realize that you know more than they know, and you see more than they can see. Can I tell you, that's not just true of children of parents. That's true of children of God. See, do you understand tonight? Listen, do you really understand? Do you believe that God knows more than you know? Do you really believe that he can see more than you can see? Because if you did, you wouldn't be so upset about the road he leads you down. See, do you remember when you're telling your kids, you ever say this to them, hey, I know you don't understand this, but trust me. When I tell you, you shouldn't be doing that. You're not going to do that. They get all upset, and that word just went out the window. Trust me, right? They can't see God's purpose and plans. They can't see as parents, ultimately, that you're helping them to become the person they should be, and all the events leading up to it matter. They don't see any of that because all they can see is what they want. See, our passage honestly makes it abundantly clear by using, and I'll have you underline these, visual vocabulary, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute, to tell the story about how God can see more than you can see. So I want to peruse all of them tonight a little bit and go through them to give you the principle in real time, so to speak. So 13:17 says, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. In other words, he didn't take the quick and easy route. Here's why, though. Remember, we're learning how to study our Bible. For means, here's the reason. Here's God's wisdom and thinking behind why he didn't take the route that everybody else would have. For God said, lest the people change their mind, circle it, when they see war. He knows something about the Israelites. Now get this. They had just come out of Egypt and they saw the 10 plagues and all the signs and wonders God did. Amazing things. But it's amazing, isn't it? Have you ever gone to church on Sunday morning, listened to the pastor preach? Wow, that was really good. I got to change. Monday morning, what was that a message about? I think they left Egypt. They saw all these things, but now they're in the wilderness. And they're not having a good time recalling all the things that God has done. And God says they're not ready. They're not ready to go the way of the Philistines because they were a very warring people. Even at that time, history says that they tried to attack Egypt, was the number one power in all the world because they thought they could actually beat them. So they had something going militarily. And here's what God says, I can't take them that way. Listen, they don't know that. They've been in Egypt for 430 years. They don't know the Philistines are there. They don't know how powerful they are. And they can't fight a battle until they see what I can do against their enemies. So he goes, cross that one off. We're not going that way. Why? Because if they see it, they won't see it like I see it. They don't have the faith to believe me yet. And God says, I don't want them returning back to Egypt. So God knows, listen, he knows all the scenarios perfectly. He knows all of the things that you're ready for, hear me, and what you're not ready for. He knows that at times you can't be allowed to go down that road even though you think you're ready. You are not ready because your faith isn't strong enough, and he realizes it. 14:10, Israel lifted up their, circle it, eyes, and behold. Both of those are visual words, vocabulary words. The Egyptians were marching after them. So they are out there. The Egyptians said, oh, made a mistake. Let's go back and get our slaves. So they go out there and they see Egyptians coming. Not just Egyptians coming. Their entire army is coming. Superpower of the world. They had chariots. They had armor. They had all the things that Israel didn't have. And they see them coming. And it says, God knew that Israel needed to face battles. Even though the verse in this chapter says they were equipped for battle, they were in battle rows. The Bible said they left in ranks. In Hebrew, it means they were in military. So they had military ideas, but they had no weapons. They weren't ready for it. They couldn't face these battles because they hadn't seen God's power in battle. 14:13. It says this, and Moses said to the people, fear not, stand firm, ready, circle it, and see the salvation of the Lord. You can't see this fight, but I want you to see this one, he says, verse 13. And see the salvation, let's keep going, which he will work for you today, for the Egyptians who you see today, second time, circle it, you will never see again. Do you see that? So he wants you to see, I want to teach you. You know why we're not going this route or this route or this route? You know why we're going down here? Because you're going to find out what it means to trust me and have faith in me when you have an impossible situation you're facing. So God does this. Not only does he follow a route no one goes, but the route that they're taking backs Israel up to the Red Sea. So they are in a place where there is no exit. So you have Egyptian soldiers and chariots and all their stuff before them, and there is, oh, we'll just run this way. There is no other place to run. Why? On purpose. God did it on purpose because he wants to show Pharaoh that the gods of Egypt are nothing, and he is the one true living God. So he brings us this way, and he wants them to see that he brings salvation. If you're going to get to Canaan and wipe out all the enemies and take it over, you're going to have faith. Jericho's walls are going to come down in such a strange way, and if you don't believe me in walking around and blowing the trumpets and all that, you'll never make it. So you got to learn now before you even get there that my Red Sea strategies is typical about what I do. I put you in places that look impossible. Have you ever felt that way? God, what are you going to do? There's no answer to this. There's no way I'm getting out of this. God says, do you not know me yet? Do you not trust me? It didn't matter how big the enemy was or how big the impossibility was. God says, I'm bigger. You need to learn that now. 14:24, it says, God looked down on the Egyptians through the pillar of fire. So here's what it says. This is what Israel sees, and God controls what they see. And then he says, but I want you to know, I see what you can't see. I see all that you see, but there's so much more. He says, see, I can see what the Egyptians are doing. I can see what they're up to. And I already have a plan and a purpose because I'm the one who brought them here. And if Israel knew that God brought them here, and the reason they're stuck by the Red Sea with this army in front of them is because God put it in their heart to do it, they wouldn't have liked it too much. The end of the story is this, verses 30 and 31. So for the beginning of the story to the end, here's what it's about. Verse 30, thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. Circle it. And Israel saw. What did they see? Well, first they saw how big their army was and there was no escape, and they were crying out in fear, God save us. By the end of the whole thing, when they go through the middle of the Red Sea, at the end of it, and the waters come crushing down on them, here's what they see now. And they saw that the Egyptians were dead on the shore. So here's what they found out. The superpower of the world, we won, but we didn't have to do anything. We didn't pick up a sword. We didn't pick up a weapon. We had no chariots. It didn't matter. God didn't need us. That's how great he is. And if it wasn't enough in verse 30, again, Israel, verse 31, and they saw, see it? They saw the great power the Lord used. And now what does it say? They feared God and they, what? Now they believed him. Oh yeah, now I have faith. Now see, we can do that. God will do great things in our lives and you can call on him. He comes through, he answers your prayer and I go, wow, I have such trust in God, I believe that. But that's after the fact. What if God says, you know why I need to take you down this road? I want you to believe that before the result comes. I want you, when you don't know the outcome of your cancer, I want you to trust me. When your marriage is not going well, I want you to do what's right, even though you don't think it will change a thing. I want you to believe me. I want you to trust me. Not when you can see everything, but because I can see everything. He says, when all we do is live by sight, we don't trust him and we don't fear him. It turns into our worst case scenario, our worst day. Every time we live by sight, we bring in the worst days of our life. We don't want to follow at all when things get rough, when we can't make sense of what we see. And they say this, can I tell you, look over to chapter 14, verses 10 and 12 through 12. When Pharaoh drew near, and the people of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly, and the people cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, listen to this, it is because there are no graves in Egypt, you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians, for it would have been better. It would have been better to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Does that sound familiar? You know, now we're going to die. That's it. It's all over. There's no way it's going to happen. Why did you lead us out of Egypt? Are you serious? You know what? Listen, write this down. When you are walking by sight and not by faith, you reinterpret the past. And what is really, really a great thing that God did, you minimize it. Oh, it really wasn't that great. I mean, how could you say, why did you bring us out of Egypt, as if Moses did? God did it, and look what he did. Signs and wonders. And they said, yeah, we told you. See, we're out here. We told you. Didn't I tell you we should never have come this way? You ever say that to God? Yeah. See, I follow God. I put my faith in it, and look where it gets me. I'm down a road I don't want to be on. Here I am. It's better to be alive as a slave than dead as a free person, or so they think. Have you ever taken what I call a long shortcut? I've been on vacations many times. This is before GPS, but even with GPS, I've been down there and I say, oh yeah, look at that. There's a lot on this road. Look at the lineup. Let's go off here and we'll go down here, take this road over here, and it's a shortcut and we'll save time. You go down the road, you didn't realize when you got halfway down the road that it was construction. Because of the construction, there's a traffic lineup. And now everybody is there, it's converged in one place, and by the time you get back on the road that you were on, it was twice as long. See, when you live by sight, that's what it does. You think, I've seen people and counseled people that take marriage shortcuts. They think, well, we don't really need to be together that much. I mean, to pray together read the Bible together, go to church together, serve together. Yeah, I know, that's all the cool thing. But we don't really need that. Let's take the detour. We'll take it the easy way. And you don't do it, and you don't make God the center. You make a marriage shortcut. And then you get to the place and it was twice as bad, and your marriage is not even nearly as good as it was even before, which wasn't good. Spiritual growth shortcut. Have you ever taken it? I don't have to get up in the morning and read before I go to work. I don't have to study the Bible that much, pray. I mean, if it's an emergency, yeah. It's a meal, as long as nobody's looking. Then I'll do it. But to get serious about God, committed to God, give my time, my money, come on. It's a little over the top, isn't it? I don't want to get overzealous about these things. And we take the shortcut, and we wonder why we're defeated by the same sins. We wonder why we never get answers to prayer. We wonder why God never uses me that much. See, we don't believe truly that he knows more than we know and sees more than we see. In this text, let me tell you what they didn't know. Israel did not know that God was setting a trap for Pharaoh to destroy their enemies in a final way that they would never see him again. They didn't know that. So when they're arguing, God, you put us in a horrible place, we want to go back to Egypt, they didn't even know what God was doing. Have you ever complained to God? You ever said, God, what are you doing, blah, 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 and then you look back and say, of course. See, we do that sometimes, but they didn't know that. They didn't know God's purposes were more important than their plans. Did you know that Israel found out that what God was working for his glory and honor, and to him that was more important than whether I had to go down the wrong road in my life? Sometimes we get mad at God, you know why? And we elevate ourselves above him. He's got things that we don't know. He's doing things for a greater picture and a bigger story, but we think that all he should be concerned about is our little life and all of our problems, segregated and divided from everything else he's doing in the world. See, they didn't know that God would part the Red Sea. They didn't know that they would go through on dry lands. They didn't know that Moses would raise his rod and all the water would fill it back up with the Egyptians under it. See, they didn't know that God would show the power. They didn't know that they would never get hurt. Nothing bad would happen, and every one of their soldiers would not have to do anything. They didn't know it. Do you know why? Because they didn't believe it. They didn't believe it because they were going by sight, not by faith. Kevin DeYoung puts it this way: we have a false view that if God is leading us, there will never be dead ends or detours. We think, like the GPS says, that God should reroute us. What do you do when sight doesn't make sense? Why would God let this happen to me? Why am I still single? Why doesn't God answer my prayer? Why did God lead me into this situation? And in our hearts, we think this: you know what? I'm done. I've tried this. It never works for me. God doesn't ever do anything I want. I'm going back to Egypt. And we go back to our old friends, our old lifestyle, our old way of thinking. We weren't ready for it. I've given this illustration, but I want to give it to you again, maybe a little bit more detail. The Prince and the Goblin is an old children's book written over 125 years ago. And Irene is the protagonist. It's a little girl. She's 8 years old, and it's a fantasy book. So in her room in a large house that she lives in, once in a while, her grandmother, her fairy grandmother, that's it, appears to her in the attic room when she's playing up there sometimes. But sometimes when she really needs to talk to her, she doesn't show up. So the next time that she does, she says, hey, I want to know how I can get you if I need you, if things go wrong. So her fairy grandmother says to her, I'm going to give you this ring. And on this ring, there is a thread attached to it. And I want you to know that if you ever get in trouble, you just take this ring, put it under your pillow, put your finger on the thread, and follow wherever it goes. But Irene objects to that because she says, Grandmother, you know I know the thread is invisible. She says, you're right, it is. It's so fine of a thread that you can't see it. But if you put your finger on it, you can touch it and feel it. It's there. And she says, so whenever you get in trouble, if the goblins come in your house, you put that ring under there, put your finger on the thread, and follow it. But then she says at the end this warning. She says, remember, it may seem to you a very roundabout way indeed, but you must not doubt the thread. Of one thing she encourages, she says, of one thing you can be sure though, while you hold the one end of the thread, I will be holding the other. So that one night comes, the goblins are trying to get into her room. She puts the ring under the pillow. She puts her finger on the thread, and she follows it. Now, she's thinking it's going to follow her to the attic because her grandmother will be there, fairy grandmother, and she'll be there, and she'll be safe. It doesn't lead her upstairs. It leads her downstairs, out the front door, and she's walking toward the goblin cave, and she can't believe it. She is afraid, like unbelievably afraid. So she gets to there, and she doesn't know what to do, but she can't turn back right now anyway, so she puts her finger on the thread and goes a little further. And when she gets to the end of the goblin cave, there's a big heap of stones, and it's all blocked off, and she can't go anymore. She turns around, and she starts going back toward the house, and as soon as she does, the thread disappears. It vanishes. She turns around back to the heap of wall, and she goes, oh, the thread says, I got to go through. So she starts crying. She doesn't know what to do, but she doesn't have any other choice. So she starts tearing it down piece by piece, stone by stone. And when she finally makes a crevice in the middle, she looks through and she can't believe it. But her friend, Curdy, is on the other side of it. She didn't know it, but the goblins had taken him captive, put him in a prison cell behind that stone wall. She makes the hole, she climbs through, and because she followed the thread, she's able to get him out. They get out of the cave, they walk down, and the rest of the story is how they go through every piece of the cave with the goblins all around because they followed the thread. She looks at Curdy when Curdy says, why were we following it? It keeps going deeper into the cave. And here's what Irene says. Hear me. This is my thread, my grandmother's thread, and I must follow it. Do you follow the thread? Do you? I mean, what if it takes this turn? What if it goes into the goblin cave? What if it goes completely the opposite direction you thought it was going to go? Will you follow it? You only can do that if you walk by faith. Got a few minutes left. Let me just close with this. There's a weird verse in our text, and I'll read it for you. Chapter 13, in verse 19. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. And almost like this little phrase, one verse is inserted in here, and you're going like, yeah, what is that for? Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, God will surely visit you. Visit you doesn't mean I'm coming over for tea and crumpets. Visit means I'm going to come and deliver you. And it says, God will surely come and deliver you. That's the Exodus. And you shall carry up my bones with here so I can be, I can be buried in the promised land that God's going to give us because he promised it. Because I'm an heir of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I want to be buried there. Now, I got to tell you, why is that there? Well, let me tell you this first. These words of Joseph were spoken 400 years before this day. 400 years they had kept his bones in a box. 400 years, most of Joseph wasn't Joseph anymore in that box. That's how long it had been. But he said, I'm so dead serious, solemnly swear to me that when God comes 400 years from now and delivers you, that you will take my bones and bury them next to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the midst of a huge generation of Israelite people who, after seeing all that God did, could still not have any faith, and they were living by his side, Joseph, who had been dead for 400 years, says, I believe. He knew who he was, and he knew God knows more than I know, and God can see what I can't see. And he believed him, and that's why Hebrews 11 says this of him, Joseph. Hebrews 11:22, by faith, at the end of his life, he made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave direction concerning his bones. One of the last things he did was this. I want you to know, I'll never see. Now, are you the kind of faith you have to say, oh, God, I need to see it by tomorrow? Hey, God, I'm going to pray to you, and I'm going to keep praying really hard. Next Monday. No, Joseph said, hey, if I never see it in my life, I believe it. I believe it. I know that's who he is. That's why Moses told the people, fear not, stand still, listen, and see the salvation of the Lord. Oh, perhaps God brought you here tonight because he wants to say, hey, I know what your circumstances are. I know what you're facing. But here's what I want you to stop and say. I want you to see me. I want you to see what I can do, what I am about in your life. I want you to have the faith to say, no matter where I lead you, no matter what that road involves, that you will follow me. Let me close with this. If that isn't enough, we have a Savior who also was guided by God into the wilderness. You read Matthew 4 and Luke 4 for yourself. The Spirit of God led him into the wilderness. And you know how he made it through? By faith. He quoted Deuteronomy. Every time the devil tempted him, he kept the promises and commands of God right before him. And he did it his entire life because he knew his Father knows more than he does as a human God, a human man, God man. You know that I'm trying to say. He believed God, his Father. He trusted him. Even in Golgotha, he trusted him. On the cross, following the hardest way possible, he obeyed. Remember the old hymn? God leads his dear children along, some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. Our God will lead us. And you know who he leads us with? His son, Jesus. He'll lead us through the difficult days, the nights, the hard seasons, until we see him face to face. What he wants from you is, will you trust me? Let's close tonight with a Selah version of this old hymn, God Leads His Children.